Well, hey there, and we are back with another episode of People in Progress. This is our church's podcast for two reasons, where we can get to know one another better, because if we know each other, then we can love each other. And two, if there are people outside the church listening to this, they can go, oh, hey, I've been there too, or I've dealt with similar problems. So, we're not just people that have it all figured out. We are, in fact, people in progress. So very excited to sit down with the one and only Andrew Pfundstein today. Andrew, you and your family have been part of our church for how many years now?
It'll be 3 years this fall.
3 already?
Yeah, we're getting there, yeah.
Man, that seems like that went really quickly.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Well, that's cool. Well, thanks for sitting down with us today and sharing just a little bit of your story. We're not going to go doing the whole thing. You could run this equipment better than me, so you could probably do your own if you ever wanted to. So, Andrew, tell us, where you're from. Tell us about your family. Let's start there.
Yeah, well, so I'm originally from Illinois. That's where I grew up. I was born in Indiana, but I grew up in Illinois. And then when I was 22, I joined the Army.
Okay.
And so that led me on a pretty circuitous route down here to Texas.
I'm really excited that people's vocabulary is going to be just increased dramatically just from this podcast. So for people who don't know what circuitous means, you've been around. You've been in a lot of different places.
I mean, when I was in the military, I spent some time on the East Coast, on the West Coast, points in between.
Okay.
Europe for a little while, and just kind of eventually, I was at Fort Hood, which is just down the highway.
I don't know what Fort Hood is.
I'm sorry, it's Fort Cavazos.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's still hard to get used to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't interact with it much anymore.
Sure.
So I don't think I've been there since they renamed it.
Okay.
Even though, it's not very far away, but I don't really have a lot of reason to go there anymore.
Sure. How long were you in the service?
So I was on active duty for 6.5 years, and then I did 3 years in the reserves.
Okay.
And then I'm a civilian now.
Right on.
Happy to be so.
Well, good. Yeah. Well, we can still say thank you for your service.
Oh, well, hey,
appreciate
it. It was an honor to serve.
All right.
Yeah.
So the military brought you to Texas.
That's right. Yeah. So then once I finished so while I was in the service, I met my wife, Caitlin, and then we got married. And so after I got out of the Army, or at least after I came off active duty, we stayed in the area because she had started teaching in the area.
All right.
And so this was where we have been since then. And now I have a job and she's back in school. And so this is just, we like it here. And
why wouldn't you?
It's honestly nice people, nice place. The weather's a little hot sometimes, but
yeah. Especially right now, we're in the hundreds.
Yeah, it's rough out there.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's how you guys got here. And if you want to hear a little bit more of the how they got together, you can listen to Caitlin's episode and get all the details that way. That's very good. So where are you at? Like from your family? I think you've got older siblings, if I remember right.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 6 children.
Okay.
I have 4 older brothers and 1 older sister, and they are somewhat scattered. Got a brother out on the East Coast, a brother in Colorado, brother in Illinois, and a sister in Illinois. My sister lives in Illinois. My sister still lives in the hometown where I grew up in, and then my other brother lives in Indiana. So we're all kind of all over the place. And as far as like age range, my oldest brother is 16 years older than me.
Okay, there's quite a gap.
Yeah, there's a gap there. So my 4 brothers are all within a couple of years of each other, and then there's a pretty big gap, and then my sister and I are a couple of years apart.
Okay.
So
yeah, late to the party, but still at the party.
Yeah, almost like a second family, I guess. And the way that's kind of, I guess, our relationships are kind of strange, right? Because, an 18-year-old and a 2-year-old are not going to be best friends, right?
Not a lot in common.
So my oldest brother, James, and I have never been, we're not close, but like we're not estranged either. When we get together at family at Christmas time and family gatherings. We have a good time, but he's always, most of them have always kind of been in a much different phase of their life than me. And so now that I'm more grown up and, I have kids and a family and they have kids and a family, like we're in that kind of mode, the same, phase and understanding of things, but we live so far apart that it's hard to be close in that way. So different challenges, but like I said, when we get together, we're not dysfunctional by any means. It's just, I don't know, we're not close.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. 16 years between you. It's like a lifetime when you're a kid, especially.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. So,
all right. So you mentioned you had kids. So what do you want to share about that?
Caitlin and I have a son. He's almost 2.5, which is crazy.
Mind blowing.
I mean, yeah, like I said, we've been coming to this church for 3 years. And so, Owen was born pretty soon after that. And so like, it's weird how much I associate him with this church, I guess, because outside of our house, I think this church may be the place he's probably spent the most time in his life, which I think is a good thing. Like I'm actually kind of proud of that as a father, I think. That like he is like, when we say we're going to church, he gets excited.
Oh, fun.
When he sees people here at church, he knows who they are. He knows, he can go over to Mr. Phil and Mr. Phil will pick him up and play with him and sneak him a donut every once in a while. He knows
surrogate grandparent.
I mean, and he knows, oh, Miss Janet, I waved to Miss Janet. Hi, gets excited when he sees, there's these people here who care about him as if he was their own. Right. And he really feels that. And we see that from a lot of people here. And so I'm really glad that that's been a part of his life growing up.
Yeah. Well, we are too. I mean, so would you say church is a good place to bring kids?
I would state it emphatically.
I need a vocabulary count. Da-ding, da-ding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I would too. That's cool. Well, so you're married, you have a kid, and what hobbies are you into? What do you like to do when you're not doing your job?
Let's see. I've never really been much of like a dedicated, like this is my hobby kind of person. I'll do something for a little while. If it interests me, maybe I'll do it for a longer time. But right now I have a little garden. I'm growing some tomatoes. Okay. I had some pea pods that didn't quite work out and some carrots that are not quite working out. I have some peppers that are also working out.
Okay. So we're like 50-50 so far.
Yeah. And, that's taken up not a ton of time because there's not much to it. But this is the first time I've ever been able to actually get, I think the first year I tried growing tomatoes, I got a single tomato. Okay. Yeah, and so this year I've gotten I'm up to 8 or 9 good tomatoes. Hey. Yeah, and even Caitlin agrees, they're really good tomatoes.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's something I'm doing right now. I've always played video games. I don't know if I would consider that a hobby or just a distraction. Is there a difference? I don't know. I don't play as much as I used to. Sure. But I have a standing appointment on Monday evenings with some of my friends back home, and we play video games together, and that's kind of how I keep in contact with them. Yeah. So there's that kind of social aspect to it. Other than that, I like taking care of my lawn. I like taking care of the house. I like to spend as much time with my son as I can because he's asleep when I go to work, and he goes to bed just a few hours after I get home. Sure. So I try to put as much time in the evenings and on the weekends as I can there. Yeah.
Well, I just watching you guys, I can tell y'all both love your son, and it shows. And he knows that he's loved, and just you guys are doing a great job. So keep up the good work.
Yeah. And it's like my experience these last 2.5 years has been if you pour yourself into your kids and you really watch them grow, there's a lot of joy in that. Right. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know. I would imagine that a craftsman, making like a table, as you see it take shape and you take note of the details and stuff like that, that's kind of how they feel, maybe it's not a perfect comparison, but yeah, I like,
yeah. And then moving out is like you give the table away and you watch, you're invited to a meal that's at that table.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Man, I need to tap you for more of my sermon helps. All right. Well, cool. Well, just out of curiosity, if you want to say, what's the video game that you guys play on Monday nights?
So for a long time it was Overwatch.
Yeah.
And it wasn't out of any particular love or devotion to Overwatch. It was just kind of like, it's a really easy game to just pick up once a week. And then, and now, Diablo 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is one that just came out. And we'll see how long that one lasts.
Okay. Yeah. And is that also a multiplayer kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, they rarely, every once in a while, we'll take a break from something and play different video games, but generally we try to play the same game because it's more social that way, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Y'all all literally on the same page.
Yeah.
Talking about the same things. That's cool. Well, that's cool. Well, so thank you for sharing those little details and things. I learned things I didn't know already. So I'm excited for our people to hear this. So tell us, how did you first come to know the Lord Jesus?
I mean, I was fortunate enough to be raised in a Christian household. My parents were and are devout Christians. And so it was a part of who we were. And this, I don't know, people might hear this and think, well, okay, so you've never examined your faith and had it tested because you were never out. You've been in a bubble my whole life. And I there are aspects, parts of that's not an invalid criticism of my faith. I don't see myself as having been tested in the same ways as a lot of people, but it was just, as I was growing up, the church was there. We prayed at meals. My mom would read me books, religiously oriented books, things like that.
Okay.
And it was just, I don't know if it was just so ingrained in me that's kind of always been a part of me. And so I don't want to say like there was never any choice for me, because not even everyone in my family, my brothers and sisters, I guess I don't really know where they are in their faith or anything like that, but I know most of them I don't think go to church regularly. And I would guess, and maybe I should have some conversations with them about this, that some of them aren't even believers. So, I guess what worked for me is, for what my parents did, didn't necessarily work for them. So, that's just kind of, how it was. And so I think what really kind of cemented it for me was when my parents divorced, when I was, I think they separated when I was 9 and divorced when I was 11. So at that point, the most stable thing in my life was our church life. And, when my dad moved halfway across the state and I was only seeing him every other week, I knew that the most stable thing was always going to be I could go to church on Sunday. I could go to church on Wednesdays. I could go to, all my best friends were there at the church. And
so you had some good connections there.
Yeah. Good. And so I think that kept me, emotionally stable, grounded. I also saw what it did for my mother because I knew it was a hard time for her. And so she really leaned on the church, and especially the ladies of that church took care of my mother. I mean, in a way that, like, I think it was exactly what she needed when she needed it. They were Jesus to her.
Awesome.
And it was, it was great to see. And it's only really looking back on it that I really fully understand that.
Sure.
But yeah, it was I don't know how I could really exist without it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just such an integral part of your life.
Yeah. I would say so.
And so if your parents got you to church and kept you in church, I mean, I'm getting the next question I have is who influenced your walk with Jesus? I'm going to guess it was your parents.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And even, even when my father was, he was never absent, right? But he was only in my life, when he could be, right?
That makes sense.
It was always when we would go see him, every other weekend, we would still go to church. It was a different church, but he wanted to make sure we were still that was still part of our weekend routine, and he didn't want to interrupt that. And he would always make sure that when he dropped us off on Sunday nights, it would be in time to go to Sunday night youth group.
Okay,
and so it wasn't as though he had turned his back on faith, and he had shirked any responsibility for doing his part to make sure that we knew it was important for us to be involved in the church.
Right, and didn't just say you need to go do this, but got you there and did what it took to keep that consistency going.
Absolutely. And then even when we, because there came a point kind of in high school where we stopped going to see him as much. I mean, he and my stepmom still go to church. I mean, she's a lady of devout faith as well. And so, that's always been a part of their life. Even it wasn't performative for my father. He didn't pretend like church was important. Even when we weren't there, they were still going to church. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't just for show.
Right.
That's important too. Was there anybody else over the years that you thought, man, they really poured into my life at a critical time, or even if they just said something that encouraged you in your faith? Can you point to anybody else besides your parents that maybe did that for you?
Well, so being in the military, being far from home, it's really easy to just kind of disconnect. And so when I was at my first duty station, I think it was almost a year that I went without finding a church. Even just I just kind of just let it slip away. Sunday mornings were for sleeping in.
Hey.
And then at one point I was just, okay, let me just try it out. And I had seen a sign on the side of the road. It was like an old sign that I think the Nazarene church there in Fayetteville, North Carolina must have put up. And I talked to a few people because they would ask me, how'd you find it? And I don't think they even knew it was there anymore.
It was there so long.
It had been there so long. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, so I saw it driving one day. I was like, okay, Sunday I'm going to go check that church out just to do it. And I mean, it was a small church. There were very few people there, but they welcomed me in. And they talked to me, and they wanted to get to know me, and they invited me over. The pastor's family invited me over for lunch, and eventually they got me up on stage singing with the worship team.
What?
Yeah. So for the next, I think, year and a half, they were. I mean, they cared about me. They'd send me text messages, and they knew, churches in military towns, they know this when they take you in, that eventually you're gonna move on. So they did this knowing that, like, when I left, it was probably gonna be forever,
right?
But they cared about me, and several of them were ex-military, so they're easy to talk to about that sort of thing. Right. We have that in this church, and so that church, and then when I moved to California, got stationed there. Same thing. They'd had military people come through, but they weren't afraid to, welcome you in, get close, invite you to meals, and, get you involved in the church for as much as, and for as long as they could. And then, so I can say, well, Pastor Mark in Fayetteville or Pastor Barry in in Monterey, like, yeah, they were, you know, godly examples to me, but like it was the environment of those churches that they had, and just the whole of these, and both of those churches were very small churches, kind of like we are now, where it's very like, you know, everybody's name, you can say hi to everybody and have a conversation with everybody on a Sunday, which I think is a good thing.
Right.
And so that's it. It was warm and welcoming, and it kept, I don't know, just for somebody who's far away from home and in some cases very lonely. Yeah. You know, it's a really awesome thing to do for somebody.
Good. So it was maybe not just an individual, but the collective of the church. Yeah. Like they just showed you matter here, and we're glad that you're here.
And the, you know, obviously the teachings of those churches were nourishing to me.
Sure.
You know, I remember sitting down to a Sunday school lesson about, you know, it was an apologetics focused Sunday school lesson. And it was kind of at a time in my life when I was like, how much of this do I really believe? 'Cause there's a lot of people in the military who are not believers and, you know, aren't afraid to challenge you on that sort of thing when they find out. So, you know, it was it was really well timed where, you know, I'd kind of been having some conversations with people that I was not really equipped for. So, it was really formative for me that I need to be in church, because just emotionally and spiritually, I can't be apart from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if that exactly answers your question.
Absolutely it does. Okay. Because, you know, a lot of times people can say, well, this pastor or this teacher, things like that. But I love that you point to like entire congregations. Like it was everybody welcomed, you know, and they didn't do like rocket science things. They did this crazy thing, like have you over for a meal and, you know, get to know you in that way. And also, like you said, like, I don't know that we've experienced it as much being this close to Post, but you know, we know people get assigned for so many years and then they get moved on. Mm-hmm. But you invest anyways, and that's what those people did with you. And I like that one of those investments was you get involved. Yeah, and that's something that definitely has carried over here.
Well, so the church in Monterey, California, that's where I learned to work a soundboard.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was from another military guy who was on his way out, and he was like, hey, like, can you take a couple Sundays? I'll teach you how to do this, and then you can take over for me when I'm gone. And so it was just, they were getting people involved and keeping them as best they could.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to be part of a church, and it's even a good way to get to know people, you know, on your team or the tech team or, you know, the welcome team or whatever. So that's cool. And we appreciate the way that you serve on sound, and you also are our church treasurer. And so, handle all of our numbers and keep our bills paid and all that. So if I didn't say it yet, thank you so much for serving in that way.
I love it. I love it.
Cool. Well, you talked about moving around the country, finding your way into churches. I mean, out of curiosity, was that the first Nazarene church you had been part of in Fayetteville?
It was the first Nazarene church I had attended. So I actually did 3 years at Olivet Nazarene University. I did not grow up in the Nazarene church. I grew up in the Evangelical Covenant Church. Okay. Which is an offshoot of the Swedish Lutheran Church.
Oh,
yes.
We need a chart for this.
And a lot of Swedish people in the church growing up. Just a lot of Stroms and Sons, like, you know, Johnsons and Bergstroms and and so that was the kind of church that I went to. It was a bit more, I guess, liturgically driven. You know, I don't want to say rigid, but we had pews and we had stained glass windows, and the church building was, I don't know, 150 years old or something. You know, nice. Something like that. But I went to Olivet because I had a bunch of friends that had gone to Olivet, and I don't know.
And that's in Illinois.
That's in Illinois. It's about 2 hours from where I grew up. Well, a little less than 2 hours from where I grew up. And so I had gotten to know the Nazarene Church, even if I had never really been a part of an actual Nazarene church, but I knew that they're a biblically driven church. They're not inventing weird, extra biblical rites and traditions and things like that. I knew that they preach the Bible and nothing else. The people who I had gotten to know, from the Nazarene faith, I knew were solid people who, when I walked into that church in Fayetteville and they welcomed me in, it didn't surprise me. I didn't think that they were going to critique the way I was dressed or why are you walking in 5 minutes late or, nothing like that.
Nazarene Standard Time.
But they said, "Hey, how are you? What's your name? I'm so-and-so," all this stuff. And I kind of expected that. I knew that was pretty well what to expect. So then when I moved to California, I was like, well, I'll just find another Nazarene church.
Yeah. A good fit for you.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And so some of our listeners may not know that Olivet is a Nazarene university and that there are several throughout the United States. That's right. Really all over the world. But each region has their own, or they call them fields now, sorry. Each field has their own, and it's like over several states. Like they try to draw from several states. You can go to any of them. Looking back, I think Point Loma would have been not a good choice for me, but because it's right on the coast in California. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you found community there, and I'm glad you found good people in your life from those churches. So are there any spiritual markers on your journey that you want to talk about? Because one of the reasons that we're doing this is, we're not all in the same place. We're in differing levels of, hopefully increasing trust in Jesus. But are there times where you can look back and go, man, I really learned an important lesson in following Jesus here, or this was a crucial event in my life that helped me depend on the Lord more, or the opposite, like, wow, I really questioned my faith at this point. Any markers like that you want to talk about today?
I think for me, one of the biggest kind of spiritually driven decisions I ever made was, okay, I want to have a family. When I was, single and in my 20s, it was not at all something I had thought about. And I can't really put my finger on, a person or an event or anything like that. But over the course of just like a couple of months, it kind of was like, well, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do that's important in your life if you're not going to have a family? Because I'm never going to be a world-changing politician. I'm never going to invent something that, I'm never, cure cancer. I'm never going to do anything like that. So it's like, what are you going to leave behind? What are you going to pour yourself into that will matter, in any way? And so, I came to the conclusion, like, okay, I need to start preparing myself to be a husband and be a father and, at least thinking about it and praying about it. Yeah. Even if, I wasn't prepared to like go out and just marry the first woman I saw on the street or anything like nothing like that. But, I needed to like prioritize things in my life. And, so I'll say I probably was 24, 25 around that time. And I didn't meet Caitlin for another few years after that.
Wow. So there was almost a season of preparation there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a lot of like praying about like, okay, what kind of person am I? What traits do I need to have to be a good husband? What does it like mean to, I don't know. What does it mean to have a relationship with another person like that? Because I had never really had before. So yeah, there was definitely some preparation of myself that had to happen for that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long have you and Caitlin been together now?
Let's see. We started dating in 2017. We got married in 2018. So, a little over 5 years we've been married. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing some things right then.
We're happy as far as as far as I can tell. This is it for the long haul.
Yeah, you're committed. You're in. That's good. Very good. So one of the things that we point out on this podcast is we're always learning new things. I know personally that you're a big podcast guy. You're always listening to something. Yeah. We even like some of the same podcasts, like Stuff You Should Know and things like that. We just like to learn. I feel like you're just geared towards learning constantly. Yeah. And so since we're people in progress, we're not a finished work.
Right.
What do you feel like God's been showing you or teaching you lately in life?
I guess. I mean, like you said, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm kind of, I guess, fortunate enough to have a job that allows me to listen to podcasts almost all day.
Okay.
And it's the more I listen to different people from different places and learn about history and things like that, it's just, you can't be so like set in who you are that you disregard wholesale like another person when they disagree with you, or when they even if they don't like you or disagree with you on important things, that like when somebody else tells you this is a thing that I believe and it's different from what you believe, if you start from the point where you assume that they have their belief just as sincerely as you have yours, I think that from there you can kind of learn to coexist. And it seems to me that in our current political climate, in our current at this moment that we are in history, that this is something that we've forgotten, that we seem to just think that everybody's lying to us about who they are all the time. And I'm not even saying like all I listen to are political podcasts or anything like that. It's just when I hear people talk about history and I think, well, I don't think that what that person believed at that time was right, but did they have the opportunity to be as educated as I am now? No, probably not. Did they have, a philosophical grounding that I have? No, probably not. And so like, who am I to judge them for their worldview? When I stand on their shoulders. I can see. Right. And not everybody's at the same place at the same time. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like,
it does. And I think it speaks to, like you said, where we're at today. I think it would go a long way, especially if we as Christians could actually see each other as, you are someone that God created in his image to reflect his likeness, to love like he does, to serve like he does. And if we would start there and also know everybody's got their own origin story, their own backstory, but we just kind of reduce people down to like a sentence that they said 6 years ago, or, a post that they liked, 3 weeks ago, and now whoever posted that has done something heinous.
Right.
And so now you liked that post, then you're obviously heinous as well.
Right.
And so it's kind of like this, what do the psychologists call it? Differentiation. Mm-hmm. Being able to separate the person from the act, and that whole idea of trying to understand the other person. Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you try to understand others? Give us some helps on that.
You can't be afraid to expose yourself to like people who disagree with you. I think
AKA, don't listen to the same voice all the time that you only agree with.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Here's some differing opinions.
Yeah. If you only have an hour a day to listen to, somebody talk on the topics of the day, the news or whatever, like maybe switch it up. And, if you're getting your news off of Facebook, maybe find something like, another news channel on Facebook, because I'm not saying that there aren't people out there trying to fool you, and there aren't, people aren't going to tell you lies, because people have been doing that since the dawn of time. But,
Right.
if you don't hear something that disagrees with you, even as Christians, if you're not ever willing to talk to an atheist, even like a militant atheist, if they say, I don't believe in God and I think you're stupid for believing in God, if you're not willing to have a conversation with that person, how are you ever going to change their mind, and how are you ever going to make yourself stronger? So you need to, you can't shut yourself off from the world, as much as I would really love to sometimes.
Just hide out in the cave and just me and the family. Okay.
Yeah. I don't have a Facebook, and I don't really do social media. So
and you're surviving?
Yeah.
How?
And I think, I consume a lot of news all day. And I think because I don't have, I don't have a curated bubble of people talking into my ear via, Twitter or anything like that.
Right.
I think that's how I keep my sanity.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there's a lot of insane things happening in the world right now.
Facts.
And I know a lot of people who say, I just can't pay attention to the news because it's too upsetting, or I just get so frustrated, or things, So, and it works for me, and I'm not saying that what works for me is going to work for everybody.
Yep.
But
I bet that's something that many people haven't thought about, because we've got, as soon as smartphones came out and social came out, it's just like we just assume that it's part of everyday life.
Right.
And, scroll through all the time, and hours dedicated to it, to think that there's, an alternative. Is kind of shocking.
And I just learned this week, apparently there's a pretty strong correlation between when smartphones and social media, became ubiquitous in our culture, and and the like a pretty obvious downturn in how well educated our kids are being these days. Like you can look at test scores for reading and math and things like that and say, well, here's where they started to go downward, not upward anymore. And here's where smartphones and algorithmically driven social media came into our lives. And there's it's like 2010, 2012 right in there. It's all pretty well tied together. So I'm not like I hate technology or anything, but I think you got to be careful with that sort of thing. Yeah.
You got to realize the tool that it is,
Yeah.
And not just serve it, because that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately is, how can we like de-screen ourselves so much? Because, you're an accountant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my guess is you have to look at a screen for a
all
bulk of the day.
All I do all day is Excel spreadsheets. That's
Yeah. But you're looking at a screen, and then you come home, and then, if you're watching news, it's probably on a screen and on your phone. And so I'm the same way. It's just we just kind of drift to like what's easiest sometimes. For me, I don't know about you, but so like I've been asking myself lately, like, do I really want to just mindlessly watch this movie that I've watched already 3 times, or can I find something more productive? So like one of the things I'm looking at is this thing called a light phone.
Okay.
And it's just like, it has no social on it, no internet whatsoever. It's text and call. I think like a calculator and maybe directions. And I think you can download music to it. They're not paying me to say all this. this is something I've been thinking about, and it fits with what you're talking about. But it's like, it has like an e-ink screen on it, like a Kindle Paperwhite.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. I'm just really thinking about what does it take to move to something like that? Because I look, our phones are just so enormously enmeshed in our lives that it's just like, how do I do without, my music collection? And,
or, I mean, for, I do all my banking on my phone. I do, I don't know, like, I get all my news through my phone. So it's insinuated itself into my life, you know, and I don't like, even though I don't do social media and that's not something I'm addicted to, but like this little black brick that's in my hand, like I don't know how to separate it from my daily routine, and I guess, do I even want to, like maybe on a high intellectual level, I guess I could say, well, there's some stuff that's not good for me on it, but, like, but it's easy. It's easy and it's reliable and,
Sure.
I don't know. So
yeah, dude, I forgot about banking on the phone, man. All right. I got to really think that through. Okay. Let's move along. Some random questions. Okay. Number one, what's your favorite ice cream?
I'm a chocolate ice cream guy.
Chocolate, just straight chocolate.
I mean, if you want to like put stuff in the chocolate ice cream, like I'm good with peanut butter. I'm good with some crunch. If you want to put some pretzels in there, like that's fine. But if we're just talking like
that hits
vanilla or strawberry or chocolate, I'm chocolate
guy.
Yeah,
right on. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No, sir.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not even with like Canadian bacon.
I mean, if that was the pizza that you had, I'm not gonna turn it down. But I will never.
You will not order it on purpose.
I will never order it on purpose.
Did you guys have in Illinois? Did you guys have Donato's pizza?
I'm not saying that there are none in Illinois, but in my hometown it was Casey's Pizza, Pizza Cellar, or Pizza Hut.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, we lived in Ohio for a couple of years.
Okay.
Donato's was like quickly became one of our favorites. So I didn't know if that was a Midwest kind of chain or not.
I mean, they may have them up in Chicago or in the suburbs, but I'm from a small town where not even the Taco Bell could survive. So,
whoa,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that sounds like its own podcast. Do you have any stories that you've always wanted to share, but like you've never really had a great place to bring them out, and you just thought, man, I would love to share this story with people someday?
Did Caitlin talk about our first date on this podcast?
Well, the biggest thing I think she talked about was kind of how, like her mom set you guys up kind of like with the gift cards.
Yes. Did she? I can't remember. Did she tell the story of how I stood her up?
I don't remember, but it sounds like we need to hear about it now.
Okay. So her mom, who will deny it to this day, but in fact did, set us up, gave Caitlin a gift card and says, you and Andrew should go to this restaurant. And so we set up a time and everything. And so that day, I don't remember what day of the week, maybe a Saturday or whatever. I'm living in the barracks on post at then Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos.
There it is.
And so I decided to do some laundry, routine part of a Saturday for most soldiers. And I go down to do laundry, I have to leave my room, go down to the other end of the building. There's the laundry room, come back, make a couple of trips, switch the loads, whatever. And I'm going down there for the last time to get my dry clothes. And I walk out of my room and I forgot my key.
Whoops.
Yes. Now, this is like 4 hours before the I'm supposed to meet her.
Okay.
Right. So it should not have been a problem, because the way it would normally work is I'd go down to the staff duty desk. I'd say, hey, I locked my key in my room. They'd laugh at me. They'd poke fun at me. And then they'd come and open the door for me.
Okay.
So I walk down there and they laugh at me. They poke fun at me. Actually, the lieutenant who's on duty was really nice. But so they come back to my room with me and they try to open the door and it doesn't work.
Ooh.
And so they go. So that's battalion staff duty. So we go to brigade staff duty, who also has a key, and they come back to my room, and it does not work.
Whoa, like a master key?
Like these are like keys specifically encoded. Like it's like a card key, like you get at a hotel.
Oh,
and
okay. You're not telling military secrets here, are you?
No, because this is going to be different on every post. But
okay.
For some reason, none of the keys will open, so they have to call. I think it's the director of public works, right? And these are the people like responsible for like doing the real maintenance on the building. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll be there. I think it was a Sunday actually.
Okay.
And the guy's like, I'll be there in a couple hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because he's like off for the day, so they have to bring him in.
Yeah, he's like on call.
Yeah, something like that. And so, come to find out that like somehow the electronic mechanism in my door had like lost its programming, and so the guy had to come and like completely like swap out the door lock mechanism.
Man.
So for like 4.5 hours, I'm in my slippers. I'm sitting down at the staff duty desk. I can't get into my room. My roommate's like in Seattle, and so that wasn't an option. And my phone was in my room the whole time. I did not have my phone on me, so I couldn't text Caitlin and let her know, hey, this is what happened.
Goodness.
So, we were supposed to meet at like 6 or something like that, and finally get into the room at like 7-ish, something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I walk in and I've got text messages, and she's like, hey, I'm here. Hey, I don't see you. Hey, I got my food. Hey, I'm leaving. And so I call her and I try to explain, and she's very angry at me. She thinks I stood her up and I'm ghosting her. Like, and now we're married, so
there you go.
It all worked out.
You didn't kill it right there.
No, I mean
that's the start it got off to.
Yeah, Caitlin's a very understanding person, and it's just it really showed me like, okay, she's a patient and like understanding kind of person, and I was like, okay, well those are some definite big check marks in her favor
for sure.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it's just kind of a funny story that we laugh about now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's those stories that kind of just make up who we are, and I thanks for sharing that. That's good, and that's going to make me go back and listen to her episode and see what she talked about. Because now that you brought that up, I feel like she may have mentioned it, but I don't know. It's neat having the other side of the story,
right?
Right. So you're sweating your pants. I just imagine you're like, oh my goodness, how can I? Make this work. And so like when I'm sitting there on staff duty, at the staff duty desk waiting for the guy to show up, the lieutenant looks at me and she's like, you didn't have anything to do tonight? And I was like, well, I'm supposed to go be on a date here in about 40 minutes. And she's like, oh, yeah. About that.
Yeah.
Man, at any point where you're like, I am just going to break this door down.
If that had been possible, I think I would have.
Okay.
These are heavy duty doors.
Oh, I see.
And the funny thing is, like, some people would like rig the window right next to the door, so if you ever did get locked out, you could just kind of scoot the window over and reach in. And I was like, no, that's stupid. Somebody's gonna break into your room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so you were playing it safe.
Yeah.
It cost you.
Yeah, it did.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap things up here, just want to say thank you again for serving. Thanks for sharing part of your story. Is there any last words of wisdom, especially in a vocabulary that we're not used to using? Because we're all smarter now, having spent time with you. Is there anything that you would do to encourage somebody else to live like Jesus every day? And we'll finish out on that.
I think the best way to get yourself closer to Jesus, I mean, you can dig into the Word, you can pray, and you can do those things on your own. But like, I would definitely say, find a church, get plugged into a church, and like, find people who themselves have been on that journey for a long time, and learn from them, emulate them. That's one of the best things about going to church is like, there's going to be somebody there who's been through everything you've been through, and even if they haven't, they're older and wiser than you, and they will give you advice. And at the very least, you'll find a new group of people who will pray for you.
Yeah.
Like, if nothing else works out, like, they will pray for you, and that'll be super beneficial for you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Andrew, for sitting down with us today. It's been awesome. I played the little level up sound there because that was another vocabulary word. So I'm excited for people to hear your story. So thanks a lot, Andrew. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of People in Progress. If you'd like more information on Belton Nazarene Church, you can go to belton.church for our website. Or if you'd like to share your story on the podcast, please email Pastor Derek at derek@belton.church to set up a time. We are so glad you checked out this episode of People in Progress because it is another way that we get to encourage each other to live like Jesus every day. Lastly, we are confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.